Welcome to California Now, a podcast produced by Visit California. I'm Soterios Johnson. For this, our 50th episode, we're going to focus on trip planning, how to do it, why to do it, and where you should consider going in 2021. We'll start with Expedia Vice President and travel veteran Nathan Lump, who discusses the importance of taking your vacation days and the pleasures of trip planning. Then Condé Nast Traveler's West Coast editor Rebecca Misner explains slow travel, a distinctive approach that will help you experience your destination like a local.
It's about really kind of immersing yourself in a place, slowing down, and seeping yourself in the community there.
And finally, writer and illustrator Chandler O'Leary tells us about sketching the sights while road tripping up and down California in her latest book.
There's so many places that are so different, and you have to sit there and remind yourself, I'm still in California. I haven't left California.
That's all coming up on California Now. Many folks have been working from home for the last year and then working some more without much chance to embark on a real vacation. My next guest says you really ought to plan and take a trip. Nathan Lump is a travel industry insider and a repeat guest on this podcast. When he last appeared on the show, he was editor-in-chief of Travel and Leisure magazine. He now works at Expedia, where his job title is Vice President Customer Marketing. Welcome back to California Now, Nathan.
Thanks, Soterios. It's great to be with you.
So to start out, we know January 26th is National Plan for Vacation Day, which was created to encourage people to take their full allotment of vacation time. Do people really need to be reminded to take vacations?
Oh, 100%. We have a national problem in the U.S. with taking our vacation time. There is a really significant delta between the amount of vacation time given to Americans and the amount of time that they actually take, which might be surprising to many people who aren't familiar with that, because we don't get a lot to begin with relative to other countries in the world. So you would think people would really want to make the full use of what they're given. So absolutely, we know this is an issue. We know people don't use their time up each year, and it's a pretty significant number based on the research that I've seen over the years. It is improving a little bit, I will say. I've been following this issue for a number of years, but we still definitely have a long way to go.
Why do you think that is? Is it a uniquely American thing? I mean, is it part of our culture in some way?
It isn't totally uniquely American. I've looked at global data on this subject. The Japanese, in particular, among other countries, have a little bit of a similar issue. But we have, as I mentioned earlier, that delta between what's given and what's taken is particularly great in the U.S. I think it has to do with any number of factors. But one of the things that I've been following over the years is how taking time off is perceived in the workplace. And definitely one of the things that people say when asked why don't you take your time is that fear that somehow it hurts them at work, that stepping away from their email, from their desk, or whatever is taking their attention is somehow not good for them, or is frowned upon by their companies. There's actually an interesting statistic that I noted a few years ago when asked how important vacation was to take. Managers and companies across America said that they felt that it was important for people to take time off and that they encouraged it. And then when you ask people who weren't managers how they felt about that, they often would say, I don't take time because I feel like my manager doesn't want me to. So there's clearly a bit of a communication gap there, I think, between what managers and workers feel.
Well, this is a travel podcast, and we are unequivocal in our belief that travel is a force for good in the world. But just to be safe, travel is good for you, isn't it, Nathan? I mean, it is, right?
Totally, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of scientific research, actually, that suggests there's an important correlation between taking time off and, by extension, going places, and mental health, physical health, creativity, and actually productivity. So, thinking about people in the workplace that in fact it's shown that people are more productive when they actually take a break from what they do. When they come back, they get more accomplished. So even if you're approaching this from a purely capitalistic lens, it's actually, it's actually good for businesses to have people take time off. But I think particularly on the mental health side, we know that there's a really significant correlation. People are happier when they take breaks, when they get to have quality time with their loved ones, and going someplace new. I think when it's possible, is also really refreshing to the brain. It gives you an opportunity to kind of step out of your day to day and see the world with fresh eyes. And I think that is, I think that's really, really positive for people. And there's actually, as I said, there's actually research that bears that out. But I think it also feels intuitively true for those of us who love to travel, for sure.
So a lot of people, of course, had to cancel trips in 2020. Do you think that adds to the importance of actually vacationing in 2021?
Absolutely. We know that, yeah, so many people had their plans, had to cancel their plans, or had things that they wanted to do that they weren't able to do. We actually at Expedia, we do an annual study every year called, we call it the Vacation Deprivation Study. And we look at how much people are able to take time off and how they're feeling about travel and their need for it. We're about to release the results in a couple of weeks of our most recent version of that. And we definitely know that one of the early indicators that we've gotten from the data is that definitely people care about that vacation time and those trips that they take more than ever, having sort of been deprived of it in many cases for the past year, and are definitely feeling like they want to take advantage of that as soon as they possibly can, as soon as they feel comfortable doing it safely. They really, really want to.
There's a ton of research that says the mere act of planning a vacation increases happiness. A recent study says 97% of respondents said just having a trip planned makes them happier. I mean, what do you make of that?
Oh, I think it makes total sense. I mean, you know, having something to look forward to is just a wonderful thing. It allows you to look forward with optimism, and I know that the act of planning trips. It's interesting. A lot of times, people will talk about planning travel as a bit of a hassle. There's a lot of decisions to make. There's a lot of research to be done. But we also know that people really enjoy the dreaming aspect of that. When you sit down to plan a trip, you begin with a world of possibilities, right? We're all hoping and feeling that at some point that full suite of options will be available to us again, and it's quite exciting to think about what we'll do with that. And I definitely think that it is positive for the spirit to engage in that process.
So even if the trip you have your eye on wouldn't be until, say, summer, there's no downside to sitting down, in January to map things out, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, in fact, if you're in a place where the weather is dreary or something like that, it's actually also just nice to look at those pictures, think about those those sunnier, happier days. It's no, absolutely. There's I think no downside to it. And the other thing too is that those all become options for you for the future. So it's also like there's no wasted effort involved. You might ultimately narrow down to one thing, but thinking about what that range of things that you'd be interested in doing, that's all useful for the future. So no, I think it's a great activity to do.
So beyond the basics, like looking up flights or comparing hotel amenities, what are some of the more pleasurable ways people can plan for trips?
I've been streaming a lot this year and reading a lot this year, and with more at home time, there's probably been more content consumption than ever. And one of the things that I've been doing a lot is, watching foreign films and foreign TV shows, and
Right.
or not always foreign, even just places that have a very strong sense of place,
Hmm.
and using that as a way to get kind of inspired about places that I might want to go, and that you can do obviously with moving pictures, but also with photography, and books are a great way to do that as well. I certainly think that's one of the ways that I've been kind of exploring the world vicariously, this year when I maybe haven't been able to go as many places. And I definitely encourage people to do that kind of thing. And there's obviously all your usual sources of inspiration, magazines and newspapers and all that kind of stuff. travel providers themselves have a lot of good content out there. But I think that's one of the nice things to do now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things, especially right now, as you say, is a lot of people are staying at home a lot and watching TV, maybe reading novels, being exposed to places that you may have heard about or even never heard about, and then looking into actually visiting those places. It's very fun.
Yeah, totally. It's been one of my joys this year.
When are you planning your next trip to California, and where will you be headed?
It's funny, I was thinking about where I haven't yet been. One of the places I've always wanted to go that I haven't been in California is Anza Borrego. I want to go there and see the wildflowers when that happens. I think would be a super fun thing to do. And I haven't been back to San Diego in actually quite some time, so it would be nice to combine a stop to Anza Borrego with San Diego. That's one of the things that's on my list to do, and just explore a little bit that far southern part of the state where I've spent a little bit less time historically. So that's on my list. And
Great choice.
yeah, we'll hope. I hope, and I hope it'll be sooner rather than later. We'll see. I mean, I think we're all waiting to see how things progress. But yeah, that's definitely on my list.
Well, Nathan, this has been really great. Thanks so much for joining us on California Now.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be with you, Soterios.
Nathan Lump is Vice President, Customer Marketing at Expedia. You know the URL, expedia.com. There's lots more about Nathan at his website, nathanlump.com, and you can find links to the places Nathan mentioned today and on his previous appearances on this show at our website, visitcalifornia.com/podcast. This is California Now. If you've been dreaming about a well-deserved vacation, perhaps the first one in quite a while, you are far from alone. My next guest says there's a growing appetite for folks wanting to plan a 2021 escape. Rebecca Misner is West Coast editor for Condé Nast Traveler magazine. She's here to highlight a few trends and ideas ahead of your next California getaway. Welcome to California Now, Rebecca.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So let's jump right in. 2020 is behind us, thank heavens. And now that a vaccine exists, I've got to believe people are beyond eager to go on vacation this year. Are you sensing any pent-up demand for travel?
Oh my gosh, people are clawing at the proverbial door. I think they cannot wait to get back out there.
So we've established, that the demand is there. I think everybody kind of just feels it in their bones. No big surprise, right? So given everything, do you envision people will be traveling differently in the year ahead? What are some of the trends you anticipate?
Sure. I think, everything is going to look a little different for the foreseeable future. One thing I think people are doing is planning trips that are bigger trips than they were normally thinking about, kind of going back to that pent up energy. They want to do something big. They've had to wait a year and a half since their last vacation, and they want to just go for it. I think we're also seeing people wanting to take longer trips. They may have sort of stored up days, or, there's still some logistics that are going to be different, and, getting somewhere and staying put for a bit longer, I think still makes sense.
I feel like blowout trips, kind of like what you were mentioning before, making that big trip, those are really front of mind for people, again, because they had to defer travel last year. Do you see a lot of that? And where in California might you send somebody for a spare, no expense getaway?
I would say, maybe a place like Santa Barbara, where you have access to, gorgeous beaches, you're near wine country. You could get a group and do a charter boat. You could go to the Channel Islands. I mean, a hub like that would be an awesome place, I think, to do that kind of thing.
That sounds really cool. Are hotels and resorts and places like that seeing, people reserving blocks of rooms right now, anticipating that, maybe down the line during 2021, they'll be able to have a gathering like that?
Absolutely. I mean, my inbox has been flooded with hotels doing these sort of, group buyouts. And, we see a lot of that for honeymoons or big family reunions, but it's becoming more common for just big groups of people that, until everyone is vaccinated, you still want to kind of, whether it's an official pod or at least kind of control the group setting a bit more than just, checking into a to a hotel under normal circumstances.
Right. And I'm guessing, if you're gonna, when you do block off rooms like for a conference or for a wedding or something like that, you get a discount. So it's almost in a way, it's a way to reconnect with your friends and family, and also, maybe, save a little money when you're on vacation.
Absolutely. And there are deals to be had. This is the time.
Right, right, right. One approach that I imagine sounds good to a lot of folks right now is slow travel. Can you tell us what that is and what advantages it has?
Sure. So I don't know that an official definition exists, but how we kind of think about it at Traveler is kind of like the name implies. It is a slowed down approach to travel. And sort of like the slow food movement, there is an emphasis on connecting with, with the local people, with the local culture, with the local food. To kind of say a pat phrase, it's about the journey, not about the destination. It's about really kind of immersing yourself in a place, slowing down. It's not about the kind of parachuting in Instagram checklist moment of hitting, the 5 hot things in a town and then hitting the road. It really is about kind of being in a place and seeping yourself in the community there.
So you really kind of like hunker down in one place, and you would just really do a deep dive on that. You live like a local almost for a while, right? For maybe it could be like a week.
Exactly.
And what are the advantages to that?
As Americans, we're very good about, say, going to Italy and renting a villa in Tuscany and, trying to live sort of an Italian moment and using that villa as a hub to explore other hill towns or check out vineyards, but really trying to get into the local rhythm. And we're great about doing that abroad. We have trouble thinking that way domestically, about, picking a spot and really kind of just relaxing into it and slowing down. And, there is something really nice. And I think it's something that we all say we want to do about, going to the same coffee shop in a town for 3 mornings in a row, where you start to kind of recognize people, where maybe you have an exchange with people that live there. That's so lovely when you actually do it, but often you kind of land in a place and you feel almost guilty about going to the same restaurant or, the same neighborhood twice. Whereas I think it's those kind of real connections that you wind up remembering or telling your friends about, or, something happens where you have this sort of like switch in mindset that you get from interacting with different people. When you let yourself have those real connections, I think is when you walk away feeling like you really got something out of a place.
Right, right. So what are some ideal places in California to experience slow travel?
If we kind of think about these hubs, picking a spot that you can branch out and do a couple day trips or have a few different experiences. Because while I'm all for, revisiting the same coffee shop 3 mornings in a row, you do want variety. So, a place like Mendocino, which is a couple hours north of San Francisco, is, I think, a great hub, a great place to maybe rent a house for a week. And then you have, the Alexander Wine Valley, to the southeast of you. You have amazing hiking and you have the redwoods kind of all around you there. You have, if you're really adventurous, you have the Lost Coast, which you kind of have to hike into. You have the Victorian towns of Ferndale and Eureka to kind of poke around. There's just a lot of different experiences you can have up that way. On the flip side of the state, a place like San Diego, where you can, there's so much going on in that city. You can hit Barrio Logan for, to really kind of immerse yourself in the Mexican-American culture. You can poke around, La Jolla and Laguna and these other little beach towns to the north. You can go to Coronado for a day. So I think, kind of picking places that have these almost like spokes out of different experiences and day trips Santa Barbara, again, as I think I mentioned earlier, I think is a great kind of central beach, but you have, you have great wine right around you. You could drive an hour inland and go to Ojai for a day. I mean, it's almost embarrassing to talk about California because we just have so much variety and so many options.
Yeah, I've been to Carmel and to the Monterey area. That's another area that I find is also full of, great things to do and, places to see and food experiences.
Carmel's great. And, sort of similar to Santa Barbara, it has the same, you get your beach moment, you get your kind of, in Carmel Valley, you get your kind of nature, beauty, hiking moment, you get your wine, you get great food. And then you're also so close to Monterey, which is, a fantastic family destination for the aquarium and other reasons.
Right. Let's focus on you for a moment, Rebecca. I mean, where are you planning to go to in the Golden State this year and why?
Well, let's see. I still haven't figured out if I'm a city or a country person or a desert or beach person. I'm a little bit of everything. So I live in San Francisco and I spend a lot of time hiking in Marin, which I love. But I am craving the desert. So I think when I can move around a bit more, I'm going to head down to Joshua Tree and hike and stargaze and, just get out in the middle of it. On the other extreme, I'm also craving forest, like true old growth, redwoods that have been around literally since Christ. So I think I will head up past Eureka, past Trinidad, and hit, redwood forest. And there's a ton of good surf breaks, which, if I can get over my cold water shark fear, I think I think will be fantastic. But, way north, kind of right up almost to the Oregon border, there are a lot of kind of less crowded, less known about, less explored surf breaks that I'm hoping to explore.
And by surf breaks, you're not talking about necessarily going surfing, but you're talking about actually just going into the water, maybe for a swim, right?
No, I'm talking about surfing.
Really? Okay. I didn't realize you're a surfer.
I am. I'm an intermediate. I've been the same level for most of my life, but I do love it.
Oh, that's really great. That's really great. All right, Rebecca, thank you so much. This has been great. Thanks for joining us on California Now.
Thanks for having me.
Rebecca Misner is West Coast editor for Condé Nast Traveler, online at cntraveler.com. Follow Rebecca on Instagram at BeccaBEQ. As always, we'll have links to all the places we talked about on today's episode and lots more on our website, visitcalifornia.com/podcast. This is California Now. Whether you're discovering part of California for the first time or ready to fall deeper in love, there's no substitute for a scenic road trip along the state's one-of-a-kind highways. My next guest has made a practice of not just taking road trips up and down California, but sketching them as well. Chandler O'Leary has written and illustrated a travel guide called The Best Coast, a road trip atlas. She's here to tell us more and to share some of her favorite sites around the state. Welcome to California Now, Chandler.
Thank you so much, Soterios.
So you are clearly someone who loves road trips. Talk about why.
I love being able to see absolutely everything from beginning to end on a journey. I actually get really frustrated when I have to fly somewhere because you see point A and point B and very little in between. And I want to know everything that's on the way, and I want to see everything and draw everything. And a road trip gives me the chance to do that and really develop a mental map for the country that I live in.
So do you think road trips are poised to have a moment in the coming year?
I do, actually. I think, and I could totally be wrong here, but I feel like especially with the pandemic right now, people I think are really rediscovering the beauty of a road trip. And I think especially millennial and Gen Z travelers are starting to see the beauty of that. There's a nostalgia with it. There's some fun kitsch along the way. I feel like it's coming back.
So where did you get the idea for this book?
Well, I moved to the West Coast 12 years ago now, and I had not really ever experienced much of the West Coast. I'd been to California maybe one time, and I felt like the best way to really explore the area was through driving and exploring it in my car and with my sketchbook. And I kept all these sketchbooks. I started a travel blog right around that time, and I started telling these stories of my travels and linking these seemingly disparate places together through these stories and through my drawings. And people started responding to that. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if I could share this with other people and turn this into a book? And that's eventually what happened.
So I have to say, this is this book of yours really traces an epic journey. I mean, we're going to delve into some of the details about it in a minute, but what are some of your high level takeaways from this trek?
For me, the biggest thing is watching the landscape and the climate change. Even within the state of California, you don't even have to go all the way up the coast. You can stay within California and see that change. And that was really the biggest takeaway for me in the beginning, but also just the sheer variety. There's so many different things to see and do. If you like urban things, there's plenty of cities along the way. If you like being in the absolute middle of nowhere, there's plenty of places to find solitude and beautiful places. So there's really something for everybody. And I love that.
And I have to say the illustrations really make your book stand out, especially right now, like in our photocentric Instagram world. There's something timeless about them, and they're on every page of Best Coast. What response do you find your sketches get?
I think that, just as you say, I think they have an emotional response with people. They elicit an emotional response in a way that photography doesn't. I feel like you're able to insert yourself a little bit better when you see an illustration. It kind of activates your imagination. And also, we are just super saturated with photography. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's so much beautiful photography out there. And now everybody has a great tool in their pocket for taking photos. But it's everywhere, and illustration is not in the same way because of the labor and the time involved. And so when you see that, it really it's arresting, and it makes you stop and think, hey, look at this. For me also, drawing really forces me to slow down and really look at what I'm seeing, and I find that I remember my travels so much better even years or decades later when I've taken the time to draw things.
So during your trip, how did you decide when to stop the car and pull out the sketch pad?
Oh, that is probably the hardest thing for me, because if I could stop time, I would just do that endlessly. I would probably never eat food again. I would probably never get anything else done. I would just be stopping every 5 minutes to draw some new thing. So sometimes I had to really think, okay, it's got to be the best view, not just the really, the nice view. I stop for crazy neon signs. I love old neon signs. I love wacky roadside attractions, like the old fiberglass muffler men that were made down in Venice, California. There's still a lot of them all over the state, so I always stop to draw those. I love really dramatic vistas, and especially if there's a really curvy road in the vista. Like I'm thinking of, there's a viewpoint near Jenner, California, which is north of San Francisco. And you can pull over and you can look out at the ocean and the windy coast and the cliffs. And then there's this road, the road that you were just on is curving away off into the distance. And I love that.
Oh, that's cool. That's really great. I mean, how many times have you made that trip up and down?
I want to say it's about 10 times now.
Wow.
And I have only done it the whole length of it a couple of times, but I've done it in chunks many times. And some sections I've done over and over again, like the slow coast between Santa Cruz and San Francisco. I've done that a bunch of times. Other sections I've done fewer times. I've only done Big Sur a couple of times. But altogether, I've done California road trips at least 10 times.
And, you do get an amazing amount of variety along the way, right? Because, say, like, Newport Beach is so different from places like Point Reyes and Crescent City.
Exactly. And I love I kind of fall down these little rabbit holes. Like you mentioned Point Reyes, and I wasn't really planning to stop there on one of my trips. And I thought, well, I've got a little extra time today. I don't have to, I can't, I think I was staying in Fort Bragg that night. So I was like, that's not that far. I can do it. But no, I actually I don't want to say lost the whole day. I think I gained the whole day by exploring Point Reyes. It took me the whole day to do that. And I ended up having to change my overnight plans. And I couldn't have been happier about that. I was not expecting that at all. And I loved it.
Wow. So Chandler, that's the coastal portion of the trip, but then you came back down via the inland route. What were some of the main roads you took, and can you share some of your most sketchable spots?
I really love the mountain towns that are in the northern part of the state, and you can kind of access them if you're on the coast in the redwoods. You can actually make a diagonal. It takes you into Oregon a little bit, so we're leaving California for a minute, but then it's easy to loop back to Interstate 5 and the old interior route. And that the old Highway 99, which was the original Pacific Highway, it was the backbone of the state and the West Coast. It is still around in portions in the mountains, and it's been swallowed up by I-5 in a lot of places. But you can still access the old road in small towns like Dunsmuir, where there's a great old theater marquee that's still there. There's also, you can find these old sections of the highway that are kind of ruins, and some of them have been submerged underwater when they dammed Lake Shasta. And so it's really kind of it's almost like archaeology when you're looking for these old highway threads.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And then, of course, it dumps you out. Once you are done exploring the mountains and following that thread of Old 99, it dumps you out into the Central Valley. And then you pick up the thread of 99 again, and it's almost intact, almost all the way to Los Angeles. It's fantastic.
Right. And then the Central Valley, you kind of get this dramatic shift as you're heading south through it, right?
Yeah, this shift of climate and landscape, and even the animal species are totally different. I remember the first time I got dumped down into the Central Valley, I got out of the car and suddenly there were just hundreds of blackbirds everywhere, and the song was filling the air. It was incredible.
And then, one of the things about the Central Valley is that you get this incredible, fresh food on that drive because you're right there, right? You're driving through so many amazing farms, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a sucker for farm stands. And in fact, my husband is always joking that what I bring home as souvenirs from my trip are crops. So I'm always bringing home, like, here's a bag of dates, or, here's some almonds or whatever. And so I definitely break for farm stands. And I still have this memory of the first time I ever tasted citrus that had never been refrigerated ever. And I, as someone who's never lived in California, I'll always remember that. So, and there's, the citrus groves are now southeast of Fresno and Bakersfield, kind of tucked along the mountains there. And you can still go and get roadside citrus, and you can drive through these little back roads while the citrus trees are blooming, and it's fantastic.
I love that your souvenirs are crops, because I'm the same way. If you're going to be someplace where they grow stuff that's absolutely 100% fresh, you've never tasted stuff like that. Like, you've never tasted a tomato or, like you say, citrus when it's picked right off the tree and hasn't been like refrigerated or anything else. It's really, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So I love to seek out the areas where the kind of the foodstuffs that we take for granted are grown. Like, there's a whole bunch of avocado farms near Atascadero between Paso Robles and the coast. And there's all the citrus farms that I mentioned. There's almond trees that are around Sacramento. I love the geometry of those orchards. And I have so many drawings of the almond orchards in the winter, especially.
Oh, yeah. The trees are kind of, when you say geometry, you see like rows and rows and columns of trees. It's really striking, especially when they're blooming. I think they're incredibly beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you go in around April when they're blooming, it's just stunning. Yeah. And the other thing is that Highway 99 kind of cuts a diagonal because it parallels the eastern border of the state, which is at a diagonal there. And so the trees in the orchard are all planted in a north-south grid. And so when the highway's at a 45-degree angle to that, you get this fantastic triangular geometry going. You're passing these trees at full speed past your window, and it's really an incredible visual.
Mm-hmm. I've driven through the Southern California deserts myself. It's so special, so rugged and desolate. What did you make of that part of the state?
I think just the sheer scale of it was mind-boggling to me. And it's so different there's so many different areas even within that region. There's a high desert and a low desert. And I also went to Joshua Tree on one of my trips, and it's right near, just above Palm Springs, but it's a totally different world with different climate, different temperature, different plants. And then to the west of there, I went to the Antelope Valley where the Poppy Preserve is. And just the sheer scale of that desert region is mind-boggling. Right.
What about Anza Borrego? That place is like another planet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also like the dunes as well. There's so many places that are so different, and you have to sit there and remind yourself, I'm still in California. I haven't left California.
Right. We're going to have to let you go soon, Chandler. But before we do, what do you want to leave people with when it comes to road tripping through California?
I think have an open mind and let yourself be open to surprises, because you can plan all day long, but it's the things that you don't plan that are the things you're going to remember the best. Even if it's a mishap, that becomes part of the story for you.
That is really great advice. Chandler, this has been so great. Thank you so much for joining us on California Now.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great fun.
Chandler O'Leary's newest book is The Best Coast, a road trip atlas, illustrated adventures along the West Coast's historic highways. It's available in all your favorite bookstores. You can find more of Chandler's work at chandleroleary.com. As always, we'll have links to all the places we talked about on today's episode and lots more on our website, visitcalifornia.com/podcast. This is California Now. Thank you for listening to California Now. We hope you enjoyed our 50th episode and get a chance to hit the road soon. This podcast is produced by Visit California. I'm your host, Soterios Johnson. You can find our show on iTunes and Stitcher. Please subscribe. And for more on National Plan Your Vacation Day, including destination guidance to help you plan a great getaway this year, check out visitcalifornia.com/plan2021.